Price determines everything today, which is why we're comparing a subcompact premium SUV with a non-premium compact. At over $40,000, the Acura ADX and the Mazda CX-5 for 2026 are definitely riding in the same arena. Whether it's absolute space or more premium materials, you be the judge. But I will tell you, through the use of technology, interior quality, and powertrain performance, and also style, which of these is really going to be the better buy. The Acura ADX was brand new for 2025, and it's based on the cheaper Honda HR-V. The Mazda CX-5 has been well known since the 2013 model year. This is the third generation, and it's all new for 2026. But can everything that Mazda does so well for years still continue against a premium brand? The ADX sits lower to the ground. It's just over 7 inches, where the Mazda is just over 8 inches. But it's actually just over an inch longer. In that regard, this more resembles a Honda HR-V, a decent car, but not premium. That's really the ADX's main issue here. It's not as elegant of a car from the side or really any angle as that CX-5, but it does make up for a lot. For 2026, there's this new color, double apex blue pearl. The paint quality, like the Mazda, excellent. Both these Japanese automakers really know how to QC paint, and I absolutely love how it looks on here in this A-Spec trim. When you're getting an A-Spec, it darkens the trim around the windows, you get fog lights, and you get black 19-inch wheels. On the advanced package, these are also unique wheels versus the regular A-Spec. The car does look good, especially in the front, that big wide open grille, and the lights are really excellent. The lights are actually superior to the Mazdas when you're actually using them at night. These dual LED effect, really good. But in terms of elegance, I gotta hand it to Mazda for that. This is probably 80% of the way there. The Mazda's the full 100. The CX-5 has an extra 6 inches added to the wheelbase and another 3 inches in total height compared to the Acura. So it's certainly roomier on the inside and the outside, but it doesn't look too big. This is the S Premium Plus. It's carrying over Mazda's design language of just smooth lines, a little bit more chiseled up in the front. I like how that silver section is jutting out. The headlights are also redesigned. They've got that great fading turn signal effect on everything. Mazda does such a good job there. They put a lot of attention to detail, including these polished black wheels. There's not a bad character line or any detail on this car whatsoever. Mazda spelled out, I think that's a little bit more like Lexus and Land Rover now. I wish they didn't do that and just kept the original Mazda logo. That seems to be more of a trend these days. But other than that, this is a gorgeous car, especially in its soul red crystal. The paint quality on here, when you get up close, it is phenomenal. The ADX isn't much quicker, if at all, than the CX-5. And it doesn't actually use any real gears. This is a CVT versus Mazda's 6-speed automatic. But there's actually more simulated ratios. You drop it into manual and sport mode. And there's metal shift paddles. They feel really good. Unexpected at this price class, too. This is the same engine that Honda uses in the Civic Si, so you know it's really good. It's a 1.5-liter Turbo 4, 190 horsepower, 179 pound-feet of torque. However, to achieve that, and really to make sure the engine lasts, Acura requires premium fuel, where Mazda only does regular. Each of the ADX trims comes with standard front-wheel drive. All-wheel drive is optional. Unlike the RDX and the MDX, the bigger Acura SUVs, there's no torque vectoring system on that rear axle. Love that system. You can watch our reviews. We've driven them a ton of times, and each time come away so impressed. This is good, but you're not getting that system at all. These seats are more comfortable, I think, than the Mazdas. You can debate all you want how they look, but they're more sculpted. I like the lumbar better. And the seat cushion actually is not as flat as the Mazdas. This actually has some contours, so I don't feel like my body's gonna fall asleep on it. Road noise and wind noise is about the same as the Mazda, which is to say it's good in this class. In this luxury category, which you'd put Acura in, I don't expect any more. And when you drive Audis and Mercedes and even the discontinued Infinitis, they're all driving and feeling just like this in terms of noise. Despite this being a turbo engine, there's really not much power off the line. I almost feel like this is a naturally aspirated Ford, just like the Mazdas. So off the line, you're not getting any extra performance with it. I'm kind of surprised at that. I'm also surprised that Acura doesn't give it the full 200 horsepower. That said, once you're in the groove in the ADX and you find yourself just on a nice road, you can actually enjoy this a whole lot more. The driving position is lower, which I like, especially in a smaller SUV, because you're not riding as high. Now, if ride height is really critical for you, the Mazda is a better choice. But I think both of these vehicles offer a car-like demeanor. And this Acura particularly, it feels just like I'm in the Integra. Similar design with the dash, steering wheel, everything falls right to hand, and I think that sedan is a good benchmark for this ADX. And again, when you can control this transmission with the paddle shifters, all the ratios are actually spaced better than what you'll find in that CX-5. Right off the line, there's just that ending surge once you hit 30 plus miles an hour. That's the problem of having a CVT versus a regular automatic transmission. But I find when I'm up to speed in the ADX, I'm having a better time driving it than the Mazda. Now, both Acura and Mazda have really good steering racks. They've been known for years to do that. Plus the chassis are really good. A great mix of comfort and agility, really spot on. There's a few multiple driving modes. Sport mode definitely keeps the revs higher. It tightens up the steering just slightly, but you don't really even need to do that. And there's an individual mode where you can adjust all of those settings to your liking. There's no adaptive dampers. Again, this is the lower cost Acura, but it's giving you all the essentials. But even the small ADX, like the big MDX, is really composed. Anything rough, it's not thrown around. If you drive something from other premium car makers, BMW, Audi, Mercedes, they're either too stiff, they're too floaty. And that's why this is a really good comparison against that Mazda, because Mazda has nailed suspension basics long before a lot of the premium automakers did in the smaller segment SUVs. So these two are really well matched dynamically, they are. Now, despite the ADX being a little smaller and having the smaller turbo engine versus the Mazda, the fuel efficiency for both of them is roughly the same, 30 mpg highway. This is doing slightly higher in the city, 25, but it's pretty much a wash between the two cars. Now, there's not much power coming out of a turn, so you don't really need super handling all-wheel drive, but it certainly would be nice if Acura threw us another 30 plus horsepower in this car. It, I think, would transform it a lot. But that said, brakes feel good. They're a little soft, not quite what you'll find in the RDX or the MDX, but at this price against the Mazda, I think it's pretty compelling. The CX-5 has a pleasing engine note, and it does shift pretty linearly, I gotta say. The 6-speed automatic transmission is old by today's standards. Most cars now in this class are doing 8 speeds. There's still a lot of cars with CVTs, like that Acura. But in sport mode, it's better than you might think. The engine is also identical to the last CX-5, and it's outputting similar numbers as that Acura. It's a 2.5-liter inline-4, naturally aspirated, 187 horsepower, and 186 pound-feet of torque. The turbo engine that was really good, turbocharged version of this 2.5-liter, which made 250 horsepower, over 300 pound-feet of torque. It's actually 320 when you use premium fuel. That's no longer available. And to be honest, at this price point, I was really expecting that in this generation. Instead of that, Mazda is promising us a hybrid model with more performance than this model for 2027 model year, so TBD. Like the last CX-5, Mazda put a lot of attention into road noise, really dampening everything, isolating it. It's really good. Even vehicles that pass by really quickly, you can barely register them through the car. Steering track's really true. There's like hardly any slop in the steering when you're going straight, which is a real boon when you're traveling for long distances. No course corrections, and it's just comfortable. These seats are not as comfortable as those in the Acura, but they come close. They're just a little flatter on the seat cushion here, and there's less bolstering. Mazda also does a good job of making you feel like you're enveloped in the cabin. All these materials here from the door, it sweeps really nicely into the dash, kind of gives you that cocooning feeling, but you're definitely riding higher. There's definitely more pickup at lower speeds in the CX-5 versus the ADX. After that though, the gaps in this transmission, because there's only 6 gears, they start to show themselves. As of this time though, I was really expecting this generation of CX-5 to outperform the last gen, which had been around for about a decade. But the good things that did not need to change, the road holding, oh man, Mazda's done such a good job of that over the years. They've really been a benchmark. It feels solid in the ways that German cars always were. And the balance that it has, truly. Just the right amount of body roll, suspension compliance, it's not firm, yet it's just taut enough to make you feel engaged. That's a Mazda hallmark, and they're still hitting it right with this CX-5. The steering feel, even though the actual response is good, it doesn't feel as natural as that in the Acura. There's less vibration coming through, so there's less really communication going on with those front tires. And the more I drive the CX-5, because it handles pretty well, I don't really notice that I'm riding higher off the ground and that the center of gravity is higher than the Acura. But I think when you're at this price class, and when you want that car-like experience, because really, if you didn't, you probably wouldn't appreciate Mazda or Acura. Lots of other cars have it, and they don't actually deliver this level of performance for the money. I think you deserve to have maybe a little bit more feedback. Mazda makes the Miata, so they know what they're doing. Completely different chassis, but they transferred that throughout their cars. I just think they allow a little bit more communication to make this feel less electronic. They'd be perfect here. Like the Acura, the CX-5 comes as a front-wheel drive or an all-wheel drive car. This top trim only available with all-wheel drive, which, to be honest, is what you want. You're paying all this extra money for it. Fuel efficiency, 24 city, 30 highway. Again, it pretty much matches that smaller Acura. So even though this is a bigger engine and that one's smaller, it doesn't really matter. This is even a bigger, heavier car. I gotta say, as good as Acura is with the brakes, I like the Mazdas a bit better. It's just a touch more feel, especially at the end of the stroke. There's definitely a sportier feel in the ADX versus the CX-5, and these seats, not only do I think that they look better, they are definitely more comfortable on a longer drive. In this trim, the A-Spec with the Advanced package, you're getting softer leather, much nicer than the CX-5. I also like these wavy faux suede here in that blue, matches the paint, and there's also a nice gray trim. They're heated and cooled in the front seats, a heated steering wheel. Everything in here actually has a higher quality, including the door panels. I even like how this black texture here, even though that's plastic, it's looking better than what you'll see in some Mercedes-Benz vehicles these days, honestly. And it's certainly nicer than the Mazda. As good as that is, the touch points here are better. In the CX-5, there's just under an inch of extra headroom, pretty much equal legroom, so the front seat, not too much of a difference versus that Acura. The design aesthetic is nice in here. Mazda has a new steering wheel. They've got a lot of new stitching in here. But some of the surfaces, including the top of the doors, are not as padded as they used to be in the previous gen CX-5. And that screen, well, it's not really a good screen. We'll get into that later. But the rest of the cabin does stay true to Mazda's principles of using good textures, good colors. It certainly is a cut above against the CR-V and other vehicles that are not in the luxury class. So Mazda still has a one-up on many other vehicles. It's tighter back here, but not really by much. As a subcompact, this is one of the bigger subcompacts, and that's why we're comparing it against the CX-5. There's air vents back here, 2 USB-C ports, still enough with the panoramic moonroof stretching back here, and there's rear side airbags. That's an uncommon safety feature. Think of the CX-5 as moving from Economy Plus into an exit row. There's just over 2 inches of extra legroom and 2 inches of extra headroom versus that ADX. There's also heated rear seats, which the Acura doesn't have, but what they're heating, these cushions are actually angled a little further downward than they are in the ADX, so it's actually not as comfortable to sit back here despite that extra room. However, the good part, just like the Acura, rear side airbags, and the Mazda CX-5 actually just got the IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus, the highest rating. You can watch our crash test video. We didn't crash it, but Matt Smith went there to see it in person at their headquarters. It's a really safe car, so good that it has it. All right, this is why compact versus subcompact really makes a difference in the cargo area. In the Acura behind the rear seats, you're looking at about 23 cubic feet, almost 34 with the Mazda. With all these seats folded down, you're talking about 54 in the Acura and over 66 on the Mazda. So if that type of space is a priority, well, this is the one you gotta get. The Acura has a 9-inch touchscreen. Yes, it is small, but there's physical controls for home, for back, right? Pretty simple. You can adjust where these icons are. Here's the cameras. No, they're not nearly as good as what you'll find on the CX-5, but you're still getting the 360 views. Google Maps, all the same. Google Assistant, very similar Android-based setup here. You know, you got your apps and everything like that. Again, vehicle settings, pretty simple to adjust, nice and quick here. Typeface is really good. Keyless access setup, all things you can adjust while you're parked. The stereo, that is particularly superior to that in the Mazda. This is a 15-speaker Bang & Olufsen using the Biosonic tuning here, which means that it'll change all the bass and treble and everything for you. It's a really good system. It even has speakers on the roof, so while you don't have grab handles to get in and out, you got your big speakers here. It makes such a big difference too. Else, all the same safety features are here. The Mazda does have a lane change assist, which this Acura doesn't have, but this has a USB system that powers up to 60 watts. You could throw a laptop here and keep that charged. That's something the Mazda can't do. So even though this is small, and maybe it looks not as pretty and polished, it actually is when you use it. The Acura's small screen might seem like a demerit, but volume knob, tuning right here, Google Maps right here. Very simple to adjust. Fan all the way down here. I can go back to the home screen, temperature, seat, recirculation. And the only other things that are here, even though this type is a little small, those are settings that you're not going to adjust when you're driving anyway. Drive modes are down here. Again, just all the critical controls, all right at hand. It really is just a matter of knobs and switches. At rest, the CX-5 screen is tolerable, gotta say that. It's a really big screen, 15.6 inches on this top trim. All the others, most of them anyway, have the 12.9 inch. I have not tested that one. You get basically your maps down here, which you can't use because it's connected to Apple CarPlay. A full app suite is very similar to what BMW uses. And I guess there's some games, some other stuff in here, Google. If you go into the active sense here, you can actually see all the safety systems. It'll show you lane markings, bar graphs for efficiency. That's kind of interesting. You swipe up here, that's your climate. Again, this is fine when you're stopped, not okay when you're driving. You swipe down from here, you'll see some notifications when they're there. This is an Android-based system. Cameras are exceptional, we'll say that. Nice renderings, and when you drive forward and backwards, cameras actually are really good. Like you'll see at Land Rover, it'll actually show you the ground underneath. It's delayed, but look at that, it's pretty cool. And it's so crystal clear, you can see basically any dimension you want. So that is a real big benefit of a screen this size. Gotta say, the Acura's 360 cameras are nowhere near as precise. And some of these things you can adjust with the steering wheel, but for example, if you wanna just go into the car settings, sport, normal, off-road, but even this graphic here is actually, there's a lot of aliasing around here, all the jagged edges. Again, not really sure why we're seeing that on a brand new car with supposedly really good processing. This image too, really poor quality. Again, it's not necessary to have that, but I have to say it because this is a brand new system in 2026. Again, seat memories, things like that. So some of this stuff is fine when you're stopped, but really the way this is laid out is not nearly as good as a screen that's almost half the size, like in that Acura. So in practice, this screen seems like it'd be fine, but if you're connected with Apple CarPlay, here's one of the many issues. That's my Google Maps on CarPlay. I can't use Mazda's factory Google system. You get used to these home buttons and everything down here, but as you're driving at speed, say you want to adjust the fan, out of everything, I've got to look over here, make sure I hit, oh, here we go. Now it's over here. All right, how do I close out of that? I'm not sure. If you want the full climate controls, when the sun is actually beating against the screen, which is a lot, there's a ton of glare because it's completely flat. And this is all the fan direction controls, but it's really difficult to see. Most of them are grayed out. Again, just really terrible. And then when you go back to CarPlay, you're not allowed to do that. So I have to go home, Then back to CarPlay. Here's the temperature. Again, another slider that comes up here. There's no volume, it's all the way over here. And I guess I have to do it like that. But again, I'm still looking all the way over. Now the steering will give me a vibration because I'm getting out of my lane, not ideal. This is just a terrible user interface and it's dangerous. And lots of cars, right? Lots of cars now have this, but they do it better. They scale up the graphics. They're making better use of space, larger type, higher contrast. This is none of those things. The 2026 Acura ADX starts at $35,000. There are 3 trims and each of them comes with either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. The one we tested, the all-wheel drive, A-Spec with the advanced package with extra charge paint, $46,000. The 2026 Mazda CX-5 starts at $30,000. There's 5 trims. We tested the top one, the S Premium Plus with extra charge paint, $41,000. The Mazda should win. It looks more expensive on the outside. It drives just as well as this Acura, has more room, it costs less, but it's the screen. It's all those controls. It goes against Mazda's philosophy of giving us a premium experience. It's unfinished, it's distracting, it's poorly done. It ruins the whole car for me, and I really don't like saying that. But Acura, from start to finish, has built the better subcompact or compact premium SUV here. Not only is the powertrain and the fuel efficiency very similar to that Mazda, but the interior quality is better. Mazda has stepped down also in that department, in little details. The closer you get with these cars, the more you realize if you don't need the space, the Acura is the better buy. And if you look at list prices at CarGurus.com, you'll find that these 2 cars are more similar at this price range than you might think. For more details, go to our website, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.